back to Framing the Hammer, produced by 4A Arts, the American Alliance of Artists and Audiences. Our mission is to democratize, catalyze, and prioritize arts and culture so that American society values them and elected leaders at the local, state, and national levels support and fund them at the levels that arts and culture contribute to our economy. So today we're joined by Mathew Boudreaux, known by their social media handles as Mixed Domestic. That's at MXDOMESTIC. Is there a period in there? No. A dot?
It depends on where you go. If you're on the Instagram and now the new threads, there's a period. Everywhere else, there's no period. So
you've already staked your claim on the threads, huh?
I did. It's the first time I've ever joined social media the day that it launched, and it's like I feel cool. Usually I'm like that old person that's like, I'm gonna wait. Like I don't have time for any of that. And I did it the first day, and I'm like, okay, look at me.
Look at me. I'm so cutting edge, along with 29 million other people on the same day. That's
that
what I read.
Part. And it's really, but it's really exciting. It's energizing. It's a lot of like-minded people that felt the need to go over there right away. That it just feels, for a day at least, it feels good.
Yeah, well, hopefully for many days it feels good, and it is a playground that we have found is necessary, and hopefully in a way that uplifts society and whatnot. So, well, anyway, finishing up the intro is that Mathew is an influential crafting expert known to, I would say, probably haunt all the aisles of crafting stores, but particularly right now in the realms of, say, crochet and quilting. Is that safe to say? Mathew, welcome to the show.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so happy to be here. Those are my two main events when it comes to crafting and sewing is crochet and quilting, but I consider myself polycraftual, so I like to get my fingers in everything because one, I have ADHD and I can't help myself, but two, it's like I just want to learn so much, and each little niche of crafting is like a new little creative venture, and it's a new group of people to hopefully be able to influence both with my like crafting know-how and like the things I choose to talk about and care about.
And so much about it is also the communities built, huh? And the fact that you're not alone and that you're learning alongside other people and whatnot. I mean, arts is a communal effort, huh?
Absolutely. Arts is community. Arts is the why behind what we do in the world. It's the most important thing. It adds the color and the flavor of life itself. And so finding community centered on that, and each little craft has its own unique intricacies, is just really rad. And I can't believe that like midlife is something I was able to tap into and flourish in. It's been really lovely.
It should be inspiring that anybody can find something new to pour their hearts into as well.
Yeah, there's never a timeline for anything. Yeah. It's like they try to tell you, they lie, that by this age you're supposed to know what your career is. By this age you're supposed to have accomplished X, Y, Z. But the one thing in my life is that there's been a through line of creativity. And it started in the performing arts and public speaking in like middle school and high school. I even have my undergrad in speech and theater, like double major. I studied at the Lee Strasberg Theater Institute. So like that was the direction that I was on. And then just through life changes, once I moved to LA and then like saw myself, you know, it's like the mirror of like what I was representing with my like straightened hair and tan and like 5% body fat. I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. And then sadly, my sister passed away, who was like my closest person in my life. I didn't want to perform. I didn't want to be anything other than who I was. So I no longer wanted to be a performing artist. And I got into started with photography, and then it started with sewing because I liked making stuff for the models, and it just kept going and going. But creativity has been there the whole time. Without it, I don't think I wouldn't have made it this far in life. I wouldn't be 47 and sitting here with you today without creativity.
Because it really did give you a lot of purpose and direction, I would imagine. You know, I so often, even just being able to talk to somebody who's in crafting, some people might say, well, what does that have to do with art? And I mean, in a very lowbrow kind of way, they might think, well, your organization is for arts and culture. And I often want to say, listen, our organization is not about Broadway and Basquiat, although obviously Broadway and Basquiat are invited too, but I actually want to get into the nitty gritty of people's everyday lives and showing, not when you go spend $250 to sit in the back row of a Broadway show, that's when art enriches your life, but really on the everyday, your everyday creativity, your everyday experience. This is what, as you just said, colors every day of our lives. So
absolutely.
So quilting and crafting and crocheting and all of the elements that you talk about this is American art to us.
It's part of the American culture. I mean, it's part of the global culture, but specific to America, it's like we've really taken on crafting. And anyone who would stick their nose up or turn their nose up as whether or not quilting, crafting, sewing, crochet, any of that is art, has never really sat with a crochet artist or a sewist or
Mhm.
a quilter and never really looked at the art form itself. It's art. It's just at using a medium that's approachable to the everyday person,
Uh-huh.
and it's a familiar medium to where it's not unapproachable. Someone can look at like Van Gogh and be like, okay, I can never do that. That's amazing. Let me go look at a museum. But you see a
Sure.
quilt and you're like, oh, that's something I understand and it's tangible and it has purpose and it's useful and it keeps me warm. But no, 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 no. You look at it closer, there's art to it. There's art to all of the designs.
Have you sat with real uh I don't want to say professionals, but people who your mentors. Have you found a lot of mentors in the crocheting I often I don't want to conflate all of these different mediums, but have do you have real mentors that you've sat with to see the artistry, or have you more discovered it both online and almost academically on your own?
I would have to say now I've been doing it since 2017 is when this all began, so
Hmm.
a while. Only now am I discovering next level mentors and
Mm.
mentorships. Like Bisa Butler, for instance. Oh my gosh, she's a phenomenal quilter that is highlighting Black humans in her artistry, and she's in museum shows and like she's all over the place. Obsessed with her. But sadly, as a human that came in this body in this form, I was not welcomed with open arms into those traditional mentorships.
Oh.
As most of these niches in sewing and crafting is the dominant demographic or perceived dominant demographic is the elderly white woman, perhaps
Hmm.
conservative, perhaps not. It doesn't really matter. But what I discovered, even my mom fit into that. She would not teach me these things. She had an
Mm.
epic sewing room, but would not teach it to me because of who I was and my gender,
Hmm.
etc. So I had to learn it all on my own, and that's where the
Hmm.
community came in. Is
Ah.
that online you can learn anything and you ask the questions. So I say that I'm self-taught, but really I'm community taught. Anytime I
Yeah.
had a question, there's someone there, and that's the joy of social media is you can ask questions and discover it. And then
Uh-huh.
now I find myself in more of a mentorship position for most newer crafters that are like-minded and similar experiences that want to know the intricacies and how to get involved. And so hopefully I can be that for more people, but I kind of was cut off from that in entering this as a medium.
Interesting. Who? So now you get to be an elder,
I am.
a mentor. Who are the people who are coming to you for guidance and
I
direction?
mean, it's all the people. I have a large platform, as you know.
Hmm.
It's like 1.1 million folks all over
You have a lot of
social.
followers, that's for sure.
It's
Yeah.
bananas, but it's everyone. So, I
Uh
mean,
huh.
I actually did have a formal mentor program whenever I was a quilter. For the most part, that was my dominant thing, and
Hmm.
I was a fabric designer because I
Hmm.
designed 7 fabric collections with a quilting fabric manufacturer. I had like 50 mentees that I
Mm.
was helping, and I had this Facebook group where they came in, and I would help them like build their social platforms, learn how to take photos, like the construction of things and placement, and that was beautiful. But much like most things, it was too big. It became
Uh
too
huh.
big for me. So now it's just I have an open, not an open door policy because it's online, but a virtual open door policy to where if anyone ever has a question, they have my YouTube and I have my sewing school, and it's all a network of let's learn from each other. And I just happen to have accumulated information quicker than other people, and so I'm happy to share what I can.
What's the project you've worked on most recently that you could share with us?
Two. So I'm always polycraftual. So I'm always doing 2 things, and one is a quilt and one is a crochet blanket. My quilt is a Progress Pride Flag Lone Star quilt that I am doing. I finished a quarter of it and I taught a class, and it's a really intricate quilt that has origins in like indigenous communities and American heritage. And I am in tandem working on something that I've called the middle finger stitch blanket.
Okay. Love it.
which is it's the lark's foot stitch, but it helped me like process a lot of my trauma last year when I was doing it, and I did it in partnership with Furls Crochet, which is a crochet company. I'm doing like a crochet along with that, and it's just the little things. They look like little middle fingers, and I found it super funny. It's right in line with what my humor is, and like a
Yep.
lot of people have taken on to it, so it's allowing people to channel their own internal middle fingers that they need to share, but like don't want to get in fights and stuff. So
That it must be incredibly cathartic, and I hadn't thought necessarily about a lot of crafting in terms of mental health. Although here at Forays we talk about that constantly of mental health and the way arts can help us process things. But I would imagine the meditative process, it takes a long time. You can't really. I would imagine you can't double task it. I mean, I suppose you could listen to podcasts if you wanted to and watch TV and whatnot. But I bet the pleasure comes from being alone with your craft. I mean, you tell me, is that how does it help you process whatever you need to process?
I mean, that is the thing with the activities that I choose. A lot of them do have that repetitive nature to it. So it's less about like needing the patience for it and more about needing to do something that is mindless to where I can be present. And that's what I find with crochet. That's what I find with fabric weaving. That's what I find with quilting. A lot of it is repetition to
Mm-hmm.
where it's one of the few activities that I can do that slows me down enough to where I can be present and remove myself from social media, remove myself from technology, and get to the core and heart of what humanity is all about, and like
Mm-hmm.
the human experience and finding my spirit and finding my zen. And that's what I get from it. So a lot of my projects are that I'll
Mm-hmm.
find a crochet stitch and then I'll just do it over and over and over again. Like later on today, after this, I'm going fishing with my family. I don't fish, that's gross, but I'll sit there with my crochet blanket and I'm going to be just crocheting outside on the river, looking at the mountains as the sun shines on me. And it's one of the most
and
beautiful experiences that I can have for myself.
and still sharing experience with your family as well, which is
That part, they can mess with the
yeah.
fish. I'm going to mess with my other hook.
So you we're kind of talking about the almost Zen spiritual side of it, but also crafting is really big business as well.
Oh, absolutely. That's a part of it that I haven't tapped into as much as I could with the size that I am.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do also have another job that I do. So it has given me the freedom to just explore all of the things and not like force myself to commodify what I
Mm-hmm.
do. But wow, oh my gosh, it's huge. Even just with it being a part-time thing, really, it could become a full-time thing by
Mm-hmm.
now with what I'm able to, because everyone else is trying to commodify it. But there's so much. Every little craft, there's tools, there's notions, there's products, there's so many different things. I focus on the service things because I just want to help other people also do it. So mine are more, let me teach you how to do it. Let me show you how to do it. I would rather
Mm-hmm.
have a class and an experience than put another product out into the universe.
Which is probably not necessary, but it can make things easier when you have a new tool and a new little toy to move things along. I would imagine, but I mean, it is a big business, and we talk about I hate to. It's too bad that we have to commodify arts and culture, but it to a certain degree. If we're gonna be inclusive and talk to everybody who might be in power positions to fund arts and culture, we often have to say, listen, this isn't just we all know that this helps your spirit, but also it really helps the economy too. So all the more reason to be pragmatic about it because I mean that is the American way after all. So
That's what we live in. We live in a capitalistic society, and sadly, there needs to be a profit for things to be invested in, as opposed
sure.
to just like the payment that you get with your spirit. Yeah, that's not going to help. The venture capitalist is trying to like make money off of something. They need to
Yeah.
know that there's also profit when it comes to the arts. And
Mm-hmm.
luckily for the medium that I've chosen, because it's so accessible and so many people, like, yeah, I could very easily become a millionaire off of it
Yeah.
if I had my brain right and my mental health was right and I chose to do that with this. It's very easy. But the one thing for anyone who's listening who might want to invest, is that we will sniff it out. There have been people who have had money that have tried to come in and tried to take over, and it just doesn't work out because it's so inauthentic and
Uh-huh.
it's disingenuous. So anyone coming in needs to have that kind of flavor and flair for whatever craft that they're trying to get into. Otherwise, I couldn't see it being super successful.
Interesting. And I mean, when you're talking about the community and the authenticity of it all, and that it is meant to be a kind of a more of a personal experience, but in community at the same time, that takes away hierarchy. That kind of takes away celebrity status. That takes away a caste system of artists, huh? In the crafting world, it really is more, well, frankly, democratic with a small d, right?
Absolutely.
Mm,
For the most part,
mm.
there are some superstars
I
that
mean, we might be
are the
talking to.
superstar.
Are we talking to one of them right now? But.
I mean, you don't see me. I'm pushing my hair out of the way. But but there are some superstars in the capitalistic structure
Yeah.
that have just taken off. Who, I mean, myself, I have a master's in business, so it's like I understand all of this. So if you come to this with that business acumen, you can become a superstar financially
Hmm.
also. So there are those that have been able to galvanize a culture and community around what they bring to the table.
Hmm.
For me, mine's experiential. It's not product, but there are some that are product uh, focused and they sell like a million things, anything you ever needed. And because they have economies of scale, they're able to get things at a lower cost.
Hmm.
And so more people will go to them because it's cheaper, etc.
Hmm.
So that's there, but it still is always going to be at the core of community.
That's
If
yeah.
there was someone that did it without the community, it just wouldn't work because essentially these people are galvanizing around a personality.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's supposed to be about the art and the craft. Um,
That part.
so you definitely you use your platform to make a lot of statements, political statements or social statements or whatnot. And it seems to me from the outside that one, you're using your platform to educate and inform the world, and sometimes it also might be a tool to be like, well, it seems to me, in going down a rabbit hole of a lot of your postings, it's an interesting way to use content when, for instance, I've seen the side by sides where you have somebody giving like an inspirational speech, and on the side is your fingers underneath a sewing machine, and it's a creative way to entertain and educate and inform. Can you tell us about your approach to bringing social movements, social justice, and politics into your crafting?
Yeah, part of it is me always wanting to have an inclusive space.
Mm.
Part of it is for the protection of my mental health. And then part of it is I am a socially conscious human who somehow weirdly got this gigantic platform, and it feels disrespectful to my spirit and just humanity not to use it for good. And I know I'm on the right side of things with all of these issues. I
Hmm.
just know that I
Uh-huh.
am. And so it kind of started for me where I went from being primarily craft centered, and that's when I was more of a quilter. And I was on the circuit doing shows everywhere, and I was being lifted up, and I had like 50 brand partnerships, and like I was
You
on the
were a
way to becoming
company.
one.
You were
I was, yeah, and I was, if I would have kept on that route, I would be a millionaire by
Mhm.
now. But then George Floyd was murdered, and my spouse is black. And I realized that I wasn't using my platform in a way that I should, and that people were maybe not understanding who I was. And so I started speaking just because I was like, if I'm seeing these things for the first time, I felt like I was late to the game. Let me speak out on it. And just the backlash that I got from so many people that clearly just were never in my corner and never really supported me and weren't there for me.
Mm.
And I just was like, yeah, no, I can't have this. I'm not entertaining people who aren't going to stand by me. I'm just not interested in that. It just was doing too much harm to my spirit. That's where it's like the payment of my spirit compared to the payment in my bank made it was more important to me
Mhm.
because the world was on fire and I needed to protect myself. And the only way that I could make sure that I excluded in an inclusive environment
Uh-huh.
those people who would cause people like me harm was to talk about it all the time.
Uh-huh.
So that's how it began, was like I just need to keep talking and talking and talking because the moment that I would stop talking, people would enter the community that would wish us ill.
Yeah, be
And
toxic.
that part, and it's
Mhm.
like to have an inclusive environment, everyone needs to want everyone to be there. The moment someone gets in that environment that doesn't want someone else to exist or be there, you ruin it and it can't be inclusive. And I just took that responsibility. And so I fumbled and I knew in the beginning, I'm going to do it wrong. I'm going to be overly assertive. I'm going to make some mistakes, but I also have a lot of privilege. So I leaned into that and knew that, yeah, I've got to do this and I'm willing to learn. And it's gotten me 3 years later to where I feel like now I have a flow and I know how to like enmesh the crafting and quilting and sewing
Mm.
and crochet videos with a political statement or social justice statement. I know how to communicate now with more compassion as opposed to aggression that will bring more people in. Instead of pointing the fingers at other people, now I'm speaking more about my own learning and my own examples because it's less about the look at you as it is look at all of us.
Mm.
And so I'm on the journey and I feel like I'm really doing it in a great way. And the awesome thing is that I haven't lost very many.
Mm.
10,000, maybe 15,000 people, sure. Okay, that's
Which
fine.
is
That's
stunning that you're
fine.
able to say that, and it's actually not that big a deal. Which, by the way, congratulations, because you have built a platform and a brand, may I say, based upon art and community and compassion, and you deserve to have millions. That's fantastic. So I'm glad you're able to say 10 or 15, whatever, it's
Oh,
fine. But you didn't need them.
thank you. But in my group, I still have a lot of people that are dissimilar to me.
Mm-hmm.
I still have a lot of those
Good.
original conservative white elderly women that helped me and that were attracted to the crafting component that appreciate the fact that I do this, that I push them out of their comfort zone and that I'm now able to do it in a way that's going to bring them along. You don't have to agree with me, but you need to respect what I'm
Yeah.
saying in my community and like I'll show you the same respect. It's when people show up with disrespect that, yeah, I can't have that. And I find that to be one of the most beautiful things in all of
Mm-hmm.
this is that I haven't created a silo
Mm-hmm.
while I've been trying to protect those who are the most oppressed in society. And the fact that I'm able to do this as a crafting and sewing influencer, that blows my
Yeah.
mind. And it really just started out with me needing to protect my spirit and be like, y'all need to leave me alone.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to have anything to do with y'all. To where now I'm doing it in a way that like is bringing more people in that aren't just like me. And
Well, that is
that's what it's all about.
that is arts and crafting being used as a tool to make society better and building community. That's absolutely amazing. Now, you're a parent, and how has being a parent uh, inspired your crafting, or even how has crafting inspired your parenting?
They go in tandem. That's why I started it. Honestly, was since I wanted to sew and quilt whenever I was younger, but my mom wouldn't teach me. My spouse knew that. And so when our daughter was born, that first year, my spouse bought me a couple sewing classes at the local sewing and fabric store. And that's when it took off. I went and it's like it uncorked this desire that was pent up for the decades prior.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I started posting stuff online and it just took off.
Mm-hmm.
It just took off in a way that I didn't imagine. I was just trying to find a place to put my photos that wasn't my personal Facebook. And I got on Instagram and there was a community there just waiting that uplifted me and got me connected with brands. None of it I was ever looking for,
Yeah.
but it's all been a part of my parenting to where when Helena, before she could even speak, we would go to this fabric shop that was like an amusement park for her. She would grab certain fabrics and I would like take it and I would come home and make stuff for her.
Uh-huh.
And it's always been a part, even when I was designing fabric. My very first fabric collection was inspired by one, my love of English paper piecing, which is a technique in hand sewing,
Uh-huh.
and then two, flowers. I was like, hey, Helena, she was 4. What do you want me to do my collection about? Flowers. I love flowers. I hated florals. Florals was one kind of fabric. I never wanted to touch florals. So I was like, let's do it. So she's always a part of it. And so it's inspired by her and it's inspired for her. And she makes me want to be a better human
Yeah.
every doggone day
Yeah.
and show up for her in a way that my parents didn't show up for me. And that inspires how I show up on social media and my need to want to make the world a better place and to use my platform. So it's all hand in hand. I don't compartmentalize my being a parent to something that I do separate. It's all a part of it. And it's why I don't show her on social media.
Mm-hmm. To
I
give her her
my
privacy and yeah.
yeah, it's like the world is scary, and once I started speaking out on stuff, I started getting a level of hate that was unique to me. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, I didn't know I would suddenly get that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But I wanted to protect her from that. So it's like parenting is always there.
So
It's always there.
quilting is obviously not, it was not invented in America. It's an ancient art form, isn't it? Or is it
It's been around
particularly American?
forever.
Yeah, okay. But it is
It's as long as there's been fabric, people cut it up, put it together.
right. Can you say, is there an essence of American quilting and crafting and crocheting, or is it just kind of a regional, personal, family tradition that that inspires the uniqueness therein?
Sure. Yeah, I would say prior to social media and us all being connected,
Hmm.
there were regional aesthetics. There are traditional quilt blocks, whether they originated in America or the Americans stole it like they do many things
Yeah,
from someone
yeah,
else, right?
yeah.
Um, there are blocks that traditional quilters use and replicate and go over, and you can tell that aesthetic when you see it in a quilt, like that it's traditional.
Can you describe what that block is? And for those
Oh,
of
there's
us
so many.
who literally don't even know what you mean by what is a quilting block, what do you mean by
Yeah.
that?
Oh, yeah, yeah. So, the traditional quilt block. So essentially, quilters, we all take beautiful pieces of fabric that generally come 42 inches by 36 inches, which is a yard. We cut it up and piece it back together in a different order to make quilt blocks.
Ah.
And so the quilt blocks could be 6 inches by 6 inches. It could be 12 inches by 12 inches. But essentially, we make a bunch of those blocks
Mhm.
and then we put those blocks together to make a quilt.
Thank you.
That's how most quilts are made. And so a quilt block that's traditional, it's very geometric for the most part, or you can see where the cuts are and put them together. It's like basic.
Okay.
And some of them could be like four squares that are different fabrics that you sew together. Sometimes they look like a pinwheel, sometimes it looks like a kaleidoscope, but there's always generally a type of symmetry to it.
Mhm.
And that's how you can tell whenever it's traditional.
Got it.
And then a lot of times it's like a replication of the same block, same fabric order over and over and over again to where there's just like a cohesive pattern.
Mhm.
And that would be more traditional. A lot of the fabrics are muted. There's the Americana aesthetic that you would see, and that's that. But then with the advent of social media, it took over. There's a modern quilting guild, there's modern magazines, and the rules are out the window. Most of my quilts, I don't like rules, so they're out the window
Uh-huh.
to where you can do abstract quilting. The Bisa Butler artist, she does a lot of applique quilting where it's literal portraiture using fabric
Uh-huh.
of icons in her community. So the the collective social media has made it less regional
Mm.
to where it's more a global experience. Like I have people from everywhere. I couldn't tell you where they're like England,
Uh-huh.
Australia, people in countries that we don't share the same language, but we share the same language of art and culture and community and creativity. That those it's so vibrant. It's alive, and there's no boundaries, and that's bringing in a lot more people than what would just a traditional quilt block, because those traditional quilts are generally associated with an exclusive community, whereas the more modern quilts are more inclusive and vibrant
Uh-huh.
and alive.
Uh, I mean, what a fantastic way to leave it. I like to end our conversations with a question of what are the three recommendations you would have for an artistic or cultural experience that makes you have a full life, or that you would recommend for other people to experience?
Oh, just jump in. If you have a question or there's something that you want to do, just do it and find your community online. No matter what you're doing, there's a community. But really, just don't feel like you ever needed to be perfect. Two things. And one, focus on the experience. I want the experience to be joy filled. The end result is really just a byproduct of the experience. So if you just focus on the experience and realize you're learning a new skill, you're learning something new, even if it's like not aesthetically gorgeous, you did that. And that's amazing. And just keep going. And if it brings you joy, just go, 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 go. And then two, I'm a 95 percenter, I say. So I focus on 95% perfection. I never try to be 100% perfect because I feel like that final 5% will steal your joy. So a 95, that's still an A. I mean, some teachers
Yeah.
might even say it's an A plus. So if you strive for that and what you do, like, wow, the sky's the limit. But really, it's just jump in and do it, because without creativity, without culture, without the humanities, without art, like, what is life?
Couldn't say it better myself. Mathew, thank you for joining us today, and please keep spreading your creativity and joy all over the place.
You got it. Thanks for having me.